Another Monday, another edition of Ask Mike, a very cold edition of Ask Mike. Mike, where's your scarf at, man? You got your long sleeves on here, you bundled up. Cold weather bothering you just yet?
I'm all right indoors. Just don't like to drive home to up here, back to home. We'll stay indoors the rest of the day and when I'm not at work.
I know you're enjoying, kind of the later years. When you think retirement, you think Florida. You a Florida guy or the weather in Northwest Arkansas suiting you better?
Yeah, I mean, if I had enough money to have a winter home there, I'd go down there every winter. Sure, you play more golf.
The only thing that gets in the way of me having more homes is having more money. I'm with you on that one. All right, got a lot of questions. A lot of great things to talk about. The football staff doing big things. Seems like a new coach at it pretty much every day. The basketball team, they look like a legit top 10 team right now after what I think was their best win of the season, taking down Texas Tech. Our first question here coming from Tarrant County Hog, who asks, do you think we have a good chance to beat Houston? I was at the Texas Tech game, and we wore them down with their short roster. Houston is much deeper, though.
Different kind of team. Houston has 10 players with significant minutes. Tech's top two players, J.T. Toppin and Christian Anderson, not just in that game, on average score half their points. I think that's a liability for them long term. 4 of Houston's 5 starters score about half their points. So they're deeper and you have to worry about more than just 2 players. Also as a team, they're averaging 18 assists a game. That's insane. That means they're going to challenge your defense no matter who you are. So they're very good. And they also may have the best defense that Arkansas has played this year. They're allowing just 57 points a game. Compare that to 59 by number 3 Duke, and I thought Duke's defense was very good. However, Arkansas's played a tougher schedule than Houston.
Yeah.
They've played 4 ranked teams.
Marquee games.
Yeah, beat 2 of them, lost 2 of them. Lost to number 3 Duke and number 9 Michigan State while beating number 11 Louisville and number 16 Texas Tech. Houston played just 2 ranked teams, beating number 22 Auburn by a point and losing to number 17 Tennessee by 3 points. They do have one common opponent. That's Jackson State. Not much of an opponent. Houston beat them by 42 points. Arkansas outscored them by 54. So I feel good about this game. Arkansas is going to have to play well. I think, as I said before, I think Brazile, Billy Richmond, those 2 guys have to be more consistent. Or not Bill, Carter Knox. Richmond too. Mm-hmm. But Richmond's always going to be a flash. He's going to come in, going to make a big splash, and then maybe he's back on the bench. But Carter Knox was big in that game, and so was Brazile. If they continue to play well, you add that up to the other bigs and the inside guy, the outside players, the wings and the guards. I think Arkansas will be fine.
You got a thought on Kelvin Sampson? Really good coach. That 18 assists per game, that to me is a sign of coaching. He's getting buy-in. They're sharing the basketball. They're playing to their system. The national runner-up 1 year ago. I think Kelvin Sampson, when Hunter Yurachek first got here, there was a coaching change. They hired Eric Musselman, but do you remember how it all went down, maybe how close they got to Kelvin Sampson?
Well, they wanted to hire him, and Yurachek did wait, probably longer than he should have. And I think he thought he would get him. But then as soon as basically Kelvin Sampson says, as long as I'm playing, I don't want to talk to you about this. So call me when we're back at Houston. So he called him on that Monday after they got knocked out of the tournament. And he said, well, I've already been talking to my people here and they've agreed to make my son the coach in waiting, and this is where we want to be. So it was not going to happen once that happened. Only way he comes here is if Houston doesn't agree to do that.
Tillman Fertitta, big-time booster there with the Houston Cougars program. He owns the Rockets, poured a lot of money into that program. And they're doing some big-time things here this last decade or so. One of the most consistent programs in the country. Should be a lot of fun. Taken to New York, want to see a big-time matchup. Really love what I'm seeing out of Arkansas. They're building up that resume. Next question here coming from Swine Sation, who says, who would have thought we could beat the number 7 team in the country with Malik Thomas having a bad game? Good to see Carter Knox coming around, and Brazile was huge. It is possible we have 4 first-round NBA picks on this team.
Yeah, that's possible. I think if you talk to the draft people, they're not sure about 4. 2 for sure, maybe 3, maybe 4. Look, Brazile, Knox, and Akov combined for 64 points. Compare that to 56 by Toppin and Christian Anderson, so depth mattered in this game. But when you have 3 players that are going to score that many points, there's only so many baskets that can go around. So I'm not worried about the fact that Malik Thomas I don't think he had a bad game. He just didn't score a lot of points. But when you add up what he did, what Wagner did, you know, and what Billy Richmond did, and then what Ewan did, you still have up through those four guys a lot of extra points, and that's how you approach 88, 89, 90 points in a game. But again, if you're going to have three guys that do that, somebody's going to drop off. I just don't think that's an issue with Thomas.
Mike, coming into this year, I think a lot of people probably viewed Carter Knox as, hey, that's going to be their best player. Hasn't exactly shaken out that way. Brazile was fantastic. That second half, he really took over, and now Darius Acuff has really had his moments this year too. Do you feel like there's a guy on the team for Arkansas to be at their best with what you've seen here through 10 games or whatever, that, oh, that has to be their best player for them to go this far?
Yeah, Brazile, because when he's doing what he did, there's nobody like him. There's no other player like that because he can do so many different things. He took that game over. They were struggling. I thought they were going to lose. And then maybe starting at about the 10-minute mark of the second half, he just started taking the game over. And he didn't do one particular thing. He was playing defense. He was shooting threes. He was faked a three and went in and just dunk a wide open dunk because he made such a quick move to the basket before anybody could react. He's got some skills. And I like the fact that he's just much more animated right now. It gets him in trouble at times, but he's more animated. We saw too many. We had him for too long here where he just kind of looked like he was just sitting over in the corner and he wasn't saying much.
A little bit of a personality thing. He's kind of a little bit more reserved kind of guy.
Thought, what's going on in his head? He looks like he's bored. Yeah. Well, he's not like that anymore.
And I love the fact that he's an older player too. And you said take the game over. That's a great way to put it because it was inside, it was outside, it was the shot fakes, it was the three-pointers, the defensive end. His size, his length, his athleticism, he really did take that game over. Next question here coming from Hill Country Hog, who asked, do you think Cal needs to pull the reins back on Brazile a bit? He has a temper. The inappropriate gesture he made after the Texas Tech game is the latest example. He could end up hurting us in a big game if he reacts like that at the wrong time.
You know, this thing was a little different. I mean, the situation at Michigan State was you actually swung a towel and hit a student in the face with it.
Sure would have looked like
you,
that.
You can claim it was an accident, but that's a physical act against somebody else. Whew, towel, whap, in the face. Kid wasn't mad. He was glad. He grabbed the towel and kept it as a souvenir. But it was interesting that while Cal never addressed that situation, when we got back home on Tuesday, when they played, I think it was UCA, suddenly Brazile had this magical, mysterious back spasms problems, and he couldn't play. And so it will be interesting. You know, Tuesday night Arkansas plays again. It'll be interesting to see if Brazile gets a toe injury or something, and because they do have a layoff then before they play Houston on Saturday.
Now, how do you think? And we don't know what happened, if he actually suspended him or whatever. Honestly, he probably didn't. It probably got a talking to, and it probably was something like that. But, you know, is there a lot of gray area there? Like, it's like, well, you know, a hand gesture, although inappropriate, not the same as, hey, accident or not, you touch somebody. And towel or not, that actually hit them. They're not equal, right?
Yeah, no, this was different. First of all, if you look at what happened, they're going through the handshake line, and basically Brazile is just like tapping people, and this Texas Tech coach comes by on the other side and whaps him pretty good, and he turned around, what are you doing? And that's,
what are you doing, dude? Grow up.
Yeah, and I think he was also mad. They were making a point. You beat us last year. Okay, we got you back. If you looked at the video that Hogs Plus put out in that locker room, this was the part I liked because of what we talked about before. Brazile was open, animated, having a great time, enjoying the moment, laughing it up with his buddies, and that was not the case the last few years. He has really opened up, and I think as long as you've got him dialed in like that, he will continue to play well.
I loved what he said after the game. He said, yep, this was personal. We were motivated. We wanted to come in. We wanted to beat them from last year. We wanted to make a statement that we are one of the best teams in the country. My opinion, it looks like this is one of the 10 best teams in the country right now. All right, more to come here on Ask Mike after a quick timeout. Back here on Ask Mike and the Arkansas basketball team doing some big-time things. We're diving right back into it. Kentucky Hog says, I was happy with the big win over Texas Tech, but then the Wildcats beat Indiana, and the big blue idiots around here went cuckoo. Suddenly, Kentucky basketball is number one. Why Indiana is not even ranked, I have to move to Arkansas.
I feel sorry for this guy. His wife sends most of these because he's not computer savvy, but he really lets these Kentucky fans get to him. I don't know what his life is like walking around town or whatever. Look, I don't have any issues with Mark Pope. Seems like a nice guy. Why would you ever hold it against a guy wanting to come back and play for the school he played for and was good there? And I think he's done a good job. He's not up to their standards apparently right now. But it has gone from last year, early in the year, where everybody was saying, oh, we got him and we're glad we ran Cal off, to it had turned completely around, and now people were starting to say, geez, we should have never gotten rid of Cal. But now, after this, they're back the other direction again. That's just what fans do. They're going to continue to do that. Now, Pope's not out of the woods yet, because now they go and play
St. John's.
St. John's on a neutral site, and that's another of their former head coaches. So if you lose to another former coach, and the perception is Kentucky always runs off good coaches. You run them off, and then you realize later on that we probably shouldn't have done that. So if St. John's wins this game, Pope is back in a mess again.
You got any good stories on how much equity you can buy whenever you beat a rival? Not to cross sports, because it's not all the same. But Petrino had that first year. They're getting better there, and oh man, we beat LSU. That's the fan base. That's really what they wanted. Sam Pittman, year 2, beat Texas, a team we really hate. We don't play these guys enough. You feel like Pope can do that by beating Indiana? You ever see that happen in Arkansas history? Like, man, you beat your rival, things really change.
Yeah, it helped. I mean, if he didn't have another one of these coming up, I think it would be better for him. But what I'm more interested in looking at Kentucky and watching them in that game, I've watched them a lot this year, and they look like they're sleepwalking. And it was like they suddenly woke up, and it was like I'm seeing them do things they haven't been doing, because they've had some embarrassing losses. This was a good game. Now, the issue is, can they do that 2 games in a row, and especially in another pressure game like this? But again, I don't have anything against Mark Pope.
No, of course not.
And I don't really have anything against most Kentucky fans. It's the internet people, and they're everywhere. Arkansas has them. If you went on the internet, and Texas Tech fans are on there, and then their message boards, you know what they were talking about? How rotten Arkansas fans were. These are the biggest jerks I've ever been around in my life. They're awful. They're doing terrible things. They're acting like they're better than we are, and all this stuff. So that's just the way it is.
And shout out to those Arkansas fans too. They
were great.
It felt like they really took that building over. We had a crew down there. It seemed like it was electric.
I said it was going to be an Arkansas crowd, and it was.
Absolutely felt that way. Who do you feel has more pressure on them, for the rest of the year? Mark Pope or John Calipari? Now, I understand things aren't going well at Kentucky. I get that. But he's from there. Probably is more endearing to the fan base. Then you got Cal here at Arkansas. You got to deliver. You're the highest paid coach in the country. We want to get over the Elite Eight hump.
I still feel like there's more pressure on Pope. He might be able to turn it around. If he does, then fine. But I would rather be Cal right now than him.
I don't think there's any question. Cal's got the better team right now. That doesn't mean things can change, but right now it looks like Arkansas's got a squad. Next question here coming from Iron Hog, who says, I questioned Cal's sanity when I first saw the schedule, but I am beginning to believe in his strategy. And I love it because it's entertaining. I don't want to see Arkansas beating up on UCA and seeing Queens. Yeah. I want to see these marquee games in these cool atmospheres. That felt like a tournament game on Saturday.
Yeah. And even some of these games that you thought were against rent-a-win teams, they really weren't. He has an amazing ability to know who, maybe because he knows the coach involved, but he's brought some teams in that were pretty competitive, and his fans got a little bit upset. But it was actually a pretty good team that Arkansas beat. But what I would say is, we saw last year that by playing all these teams, Arkansas may have started out 0-5, but they had time to get better, and once they did, we saw where they ended up. Now you look at what's happened with the schedule this year. You lose your first 2 quad 1 games. So it's going, and then now you've come back and won the next 2. And what has changed? Ewan's starting to come around. That's a big deal. Brazile has figured out that if he's got to play well in big games or they may not win.
Darius Acuff really emerged.
Yeah, Acuff is good, and I still think Malik Thomas is. I'm still a little bit concerned about Wagner. He just sometimes gets overshadowed, and the guy can make things happen, but he seems to not be upset about it. He still manages to make things happen when somebody else doesn't. So, and then Carter Knox. He's gotten better in the last 2 games. So again, I think this schedule has exposed some weaknesses, and then it's allowed Cal to kind of coach around that and get them to come out of it.
All right, diving into some more questions here. Next question coming from Edward Clutch, who wants to know, did the U of A do it, or was it Simmons Bank Arena's decision to jump ticket prices from $35 to $66 before fees? The game in North Little Rock only had 11,500 attended this year. That kind of price jump is ridiculous when all games are televised and Christmas is right around the corner. I'm with you. Make it more affordable for the good people of Arkansas.
I've tried to find out, and nobody's talking right now. I'm fairly certain if there's a big price raise like that, it's got to come from the U of A. I don't think the arena would just do it on their own. But they don't want, nobody's talking about it, at least right now. But look, there are some other, I checked with some people that were at the game that lived down there, and they said there were a couple of big games that Saturday. I think it was Saturday a week ago. There was a big, it might have been 4A, 3A, 4A high school playoff game that drew a lot of fans that night. And there was a local small college team that was in the playoffs.
The state games might have been that week, state football games that weekend, yeah.
So there were some other events going on, so some of it was timing. I was told that the crowd was about the same as it was Cal's first year, and nobody was complaining. I mean, he went out of his way, the players went out of their way to say the crowd was great. Here's the difference. You can put 11,000 people in Simmons Bank Arena, and it's the only chance they're going to have to see Arkansas play in person. They're going to make more noise than you do at Bud Walton. I like the crowd when you played Louisville, but you still got too many people that kind of come in there and just sit there, and it's the students that make the noise. Well, there was a lot of noise coming out of that arena, and it's kind of built that way. So that you didn't get any complaints on the part of the coach or the players. They liked the fact. But here's the thing I would love to ask somebody. Okay, you raise prices so you get more money because it costs more, but if you don't sell the tickets, what's the difference?
And people aren't coming in and buying your $15 beers.
Now, it could be that somebody bought those tickets and didn't use them. I don't know about corporate down there. But I think it's something that needs to be looked into. Absolutely.
It's called the Great Stadium Debate, right? We always talk about the Little Rock thing and the 2 football games a year in War Memorial, and it used to be.
We're going to get in.
Before that, it was 3. Do you think they should still continue? I like it. I think a basketball game here in Little Rock is great. Sure. I think that baseball game they do every year is great.
Absolutely.
Is something they should continue and really lean into?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know about War Memorial, but only because it takes
every sport but football is what I really meant there.
The problem with War Memorial is the facilities not. The facilities is good in those other sports. It's just not good there. And there's no practical way to make War Memorial what it needs to be in order to continue to play that. You're not going to do that for one game a year. It's just not practical.
You're old enough to remember when they played in Memphis, right? When you first got it, they used to play a basketball game every year in Memphis?
They played one in Pine Bluff. I remember that. Can't remember they played a game in Memphis. Look, they used to play football games in Memphis. They played in a lot of places, but a lot of teams did that. If you go back far enough, you had some of these colleges that were actually located in small towns where they weren't drawing large crowds, like Auburn, for instance.
Tuscaloosa.
Tuscaloosa would go to Birmingham. Auburn would go up to Atlanta. A lot of teams did stuff like that in those days to draw bigger crowds, but it's just not practical anymore. There are rules where you can't host recruits in games like that. Again, in most places you got to pay a stadium rental fee. You don't have to in Little Rock, but the last time I heard, again, I thought it sounds like they're going to try to turn that into a soccer venue.
Yeah, I think I heard something similar. Part of the issue, because it's a War Memorial, may be a little shaky into exactly how many renovations they can do to it.
Yeah.
Have to wait and see. One thing I am all for, hey, play the games in Little Rock, basketball, baseball. That's great. That stadium, though, Razorbacks, it's so beautiful. One of the best in the SEC. They need to get as many games in there as they can.
Yeah.
Time for a timeout here on Ask Mike. Back with more Ask Mike and diving into a whole lot of questions on the Arkansas basketball team getting perhaps its biggest win of the year when they take down Texas Tech. Next question here coming from CalHog32, who says, listening to Coach Richardson on the radio the other night reminded me we still do not have a statue of him anywhere on campus. Why is that? And can this please get done before he is too old or gone to appreciate it? Who can head this up?
I would like to see maybe it doesn't have to be big boosters, maybe just an ordinary fan. We talked some weeks ago about this guy and this Razorback fan in Nashville that wanted to do grassroots NIL. and he contacted the U of A. They had that EDGE program that wasn't working. Well, I heard just a few days ago that they've allowed him to take that over. And that's an off-campus thing, but he's running it, and it looks like he's off to a good start with that. I would like, maybe he could get involved with this somehow, but just somebody not associated with the university. What you don't have to have is big boosters giving money. You could get a guy giving $5, a guy giving 10, 15, do it for a year or so, pile up the money. Now, it's not cheap to have a bronze statue made, and you need to get somebody that knows what they're doing. I don't like that statue of Frank very much. It looks a little weird to me. I don't know how you feel about it, but I understand what it was based on, but it just kind of doesn't remind me of him a lot. I would like to see one that really looks like Nolan. The pose would have to be right, and then if they get it right, put it on top of that concourse when you come in that lower section on the south entrance to Bud Walton where all the glass is. If you look up, put it right up there where it's looking down on everybody that's coming in, and as they start up those escalators or stairs, they're looking up, they see him up there. That's where he needs to be.
How about this? Maybe like a bronze like memorial kind of thing up against the wall. That picture when they get to 94 trophies. So it's that whole team.
Yeah,
because I know they won a football national title in the 60s. But really, since this is the only major championship.
That's the big deal. Yeah, something like that. I mean, you'd have to. The decision on how to do the pose, what would be in it, all that's important. But again, you got to make it look like Nolan. If I could do anything, I'd change that Frank statue and make it look more like Frank. It's him, but I don't know.
So his name's on the court. What would Coach Cal have to do to?
I don't know.
Maybe get the press box named after him or something on the stadium. Back-to-back national titles, something like that.
Yeah, maybe he could get a statue put up.
Well, they all due respect to John Calipari, the most famous coach in college basketball. If he gets a statue before Nolan Richardson.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't do that. They'd probably do them both or something.
As they should. And hey, John, I'm sure you're listening.
Look,
I
keep
bet you
in
love
mind,
Analyst Mike. You win a national title. You're endeared forever here.
Keep in mind that Cal has gone all out of his way to bring Nolan into the program. He has not let him just sit out and be ignored. He's brought him into practices. He's told his players what Nolan did. He's allowed Nolan to talk to his players. They brought Nolan's players in there to talk to them. We won a national championship. You guys need to win one too. That's a good way to make this happen.
Yeah, I think, and Nolan was at the Louisville game. I believe that was the first game he was back for. Got a great ovation. Next question here coming from Parallax Pig, who says, on your last show, you mentioned Silverfield raising money on his own. Are you saying that the administration, HY, their Hunter Yurachek, the athletic director, is going to allow Silverfield to venture into the third lane of money raising?
Let's explain what third lane was, because when he talked to the Little Rock Touchdown Club, he was talking about how that Arkansas didn't have the money for Pittman to win, to compete at the upper level of football. And he said, what are our options? And he said, well, we could get into the third lane. And the third lane basically was cheating. That's what he was basically saying. Because since July 1st, theoretically, it's been against the rules for a school to generate large amount of NIL money to bring players in. You're not supposed to be able to do that anymore. But here's the problem, and I mentioned it last week. Right now, that rule's not being enforced. So, do I think Arkansas should get into the third lane? Absolutely. If you're not seeing anybody enforce that, you're crazy not to do what other teams are doing. So if it's not happening, yes, I think there are already plans to do that. Now, it may not be as dire as we think, and there's a couple of things. First of all, Ted Cruz, who's a senator from Texas, I saw this thing, I don't know whether it was a podcast or what it was, but it was on my phone. And he was talking about this bill that I mentioned last week, that if the bill passes,
House settlement, yeah,
that the bill would protect universities from being sued by agents, other schools, individuals, parents, families, anybody that decided because there are people that believe that you have a right to get any amount of money you want on an NIL deal. And of course you do legally. That's not the issue. The issue is if you want to be a part of an organization like the Power Four, which did this settlement, then you have to give up that right. And that right now there's no protection on that. This would protect them if it got passed. And Ted Cruz said, it's not as far away as you think. He said, we're on the 1 yard line. We need to just get one of those tush push and get everybody over the line. So we'll see if that happens by January. I don't think that it will, but there's that. And then something else that I saw, which was much more interesting, was a big, long article on how even at these schools that have all this money that goes into NIL, the big dollar boosters are starting to suffer from donation fatigue. They're starting to wake up and realize, hey, do I have to do this every single year? Are you kidding me? What about that guy at Texas Tech that spent $40 million on a roster this year? Is he going to spend 40 again and then 40 again? So, sooner or later, you run out of money. What are you doing there? So they're starting to question, maybe this is not such a good idea. And then even President Trump came out and made a comment yesterday that I read on my phone. He said, this is not sustainable economically. You can't keep asking fans to contribute this kind of money every year. It's bad, you know, you're asking them to buy tickets and you're asking them to do a lot of other things that help the program. But when you, on top of all that, you're going to have to start spending millions and millions of dollars every year. It's not sustainable. So what is the answer? I'm telling you, and I keep saying this, the answer is to use the NFL model. You make these athletes employees of the university. You then let them form a players union. You do a collective bargaining agreement, and they come up with a salary cap for every school. It's the same for every school. So nobody has an advantage, and you're not paying these outrageous amounts of money to these athletes. That's the only answer, and it'll happen sooner or later because I don't believe that I absolutely don't believe even these rich guys are going to continue to throw this kind of money every single year. Let's say LSU, they continue to throw this money, they win another national championship under Lane Kiffin. Okay, then do you say, well, we're going to win another one. Now we're going to win another one. It's just at some point, okay, I've done that, it's over, what do I do now?
Well, if they're contracted employees, though, does that change the spirit of what college sports are? Meaning, hey, you're an employee like in the NFL. You don't have to go to class. You just work for us.
I don't think you'd have to do it like that. I still think you could make it where they're required to go to class, they're students. Look, right now, they've relaxed a lot of the academics. I don't like that because a lot of these kids are now going to class online. How do you police that?
Doesn't it feel like back in the day, 20, 30 years ago, like, oh, he's ineligible for the bowl game. Oh, he's ineligible second semester basketball. You never hear about a player being academically
No, you don't.
ineligible.
So what's going on there? That's, to me, is worrisome. I've talked to too many fans. I go out and I'm at a place like Walmart or I'm at Lowe's or Home Depot, and a guy will come up and start talking to me, and he's like, I just don't like this anymore. The reason that I liked college athletics was it didn't have all this stuff, and now you're throwing all these pro elements into it. Might as well just go ahead and watch the NFL if I'm going to do that. So I don't like it.
But yet the viewership has really never been higher.
I know.
Were you initially anti-12-team playoff? Did you think it was going to change?
You forgot. I told you I'm pro. I want more.
32, 24, whatever.
32 would be fine with me. And people laugh at me. They're stupid.
But you're going to erode the regular season, Mike.
I don't care.
So we get 8 and 4 teams into the playoffs?
I don't care. I like the playoffs. Once you get into the playoffs, then we'll see if there's some upsets because I think there will be. This goes all the way back to when I was in high school in Texas, and all of those conferences, and some of these 2A conferences, 3A conferences, there were like 24 districts, and there was only one winner from each district that went to the playoffs. So the 3 years that I started on my high school team, we never went to the playoffs ever. We were second all 3 years, and I could just taste it. Now, I'm talking to my buddy back there, and they get 4 in now. In our old district, where my hometown, they get 4 in. Why didn't we get 4? Come on. It still makes me mad. So, yeah, I want more in. I'd like to see it. Hey, if you have a 32-team playoff, Arkansas is going to get in there. They're going to get in there, and we'll see what they can do.
We were talking about the playoff. Do you have these are the rules. Nobody broke the rules, so don't hold it against these teams. Do you have a problem with JMU and Tulane being in the field? Should it have been all at-larges, or do you like the conference championship? I actually do.
Yeah,
because I don't just want to see Big Ten and SEC.
I would like for them to figure out a formula where you don't have a selection committee. I don't like selection. The only way I would accept
BCS type thing again.
The only way I would accept a selection committee is if it's from coaches. I think sometimes these media people are
athletic directors,
ADs, and all these people. They're like, what?
They got an agenda.
What are you doing in there? You having a few drinks and eating some popcorn. What are you doing in there? You got some hors d'oeuvres in there. They bring some chicken legs in there. What are you doing? You're just in there, and they come out a little. Looks like to me sometimes, like I don't know what just happened in there.
Watch out for Tulane. I think Tulane can something going on there with the coaching change there at Ole Miss. John Summerall, really, really good coach. Tulane could win that game against Ole Miss as well.
Yeah.
More to come here on Ask Mike. We got to take a quick break. Back here on Ask Mike, a lot of talk this week about the Arkansas basketball team. Major win down in Dallas, knocking off Texas Tech. Now we're diving into some stuff on the Arkansas football team. Ryan Silverfield doing some big-time things. Question coming up here from Alabama Hog, who says, Coach Ryan Silverfield mentioned in the interview that he repainted the doors. What doors? Keller, and the rationale for repainting it.
Yeah, I called over there, and it's not as dramatic as you may think. He's not changing the color scheme or anything like this. Basically, from what I've been able to determine, what happened, and I want to go back and do a little bit of history of that Fred Smith Center, because when Petrino was here, one of the big issues he had was they put a museum down on the second floor. Well, Petrino's office was to the east of that museum, and the coaches' offices were the west. And when the players came up to either see Petrino or see their position coach, they were walking around, these fans were coming up and asking him for autographs. So he went nuts, and he told Jeff Long, I cannot do this. And he was winning, so he was going to get what he wanted. You got to build me a facility and get me away from all this. So they asked him, he said, look, we need something where we tie in our practice facility with the indoor practice area, and we need a weight room over there. So they did come up with a pretty good plan. But one of those parts of that plan really fit Petrino, and that was where you went down below the ground. There's no windows down there. And he felt like if I got my players down here and we're in meetings and their locker room is down there, no way they're interacting with any fans. The problem with that was, and by the way, he never coached. He got fired before that facility was ever open. So Bielema was the first guy to coach there. Well, I talked to Bielema, one of Bielema's assistants, 2 or 3 years into Bielema's time here. I was standing in that parking lot sort of behind that whole thing, and he was telling me, he said, man, this place is a mess. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, man, he said, it's dark down there and it's depressing. And
no,
he said,
no light, no window.
Yeah, it's not bright enough. They got no windows. And he said, we bring recruits in here and they tell us Alabama was a lot better. Well, it was better at Ole Miss. They got this and we got to do something about this. And I thought, well, good luck on trying to rebuild that. They just rebuilt it. Well, they're not going to do that. But here's what Silverfield realized the minute he went in there. He went, it's too dark down here. So they changed all the lighting to LED, what they call the color temperature is a way you measure the sunlight is like 5,000 degrees, whatever on that. Incandescent bulbs that most people used to have in their house like 3,200. So you got to go up from 3,200 to 5,000. It creates this brighter light, and it looks brighter. It's more like the sun, and you feel like you're kind of got windows. So he did that. But then, apparently, nobody had done little things like, oh man, you got some few dents in these doors. You got some scuff marks on the wall here. This part over here needs to be repainted. This door doesn't work very well. So he got some maintenance people, and they went around and identified all the things that need to be fixed, and they are in the process of doing all that. And I talked to somebody that said, look, here's the deal. You bring a recruit in to the place where they're going to meet with the other players, the place where their locker room is, and you bring them down to that level, it better look good when they come in here, first impression. He said, would you invite some friends over to your house that had never been there before, and your rugs are dirty and your walls got marks all over it where your dogs jumped on the wall and stuff? You'd repaint all that. You'd make it look good when they came in. He said, that's what he's doing right now. Mm-hmm. To me, this goes hand in hand with everything that he said, which is he's all about details, little details. Don't overlook anything. If you're a player, yes, the big things are important, but you know how you get to the big things? By doing the little things right. Don't skip anything. So I'm not gonna overlook the fact that this area down here looks a little dingy. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna make it brighter. And then we're going to do other things. You know, we're just going to go point A to point B to point C to point D, and we're going to do it every day.
Yeah, it's quite the change. I had heard, as you heard, it indicated there, Petrino's fingerprints were all over that thing. Like literally, he was in on the blueprints. You know, I want it this way, here, this, and and as you said, he got everything he wanted.
He was all about separating his players from everybody. He didn't want them talking to anybody, being around anybody but the coaches, and that's fine. But he forgot the fact that they don't want to sit down in a bunker all day long.
Isn't that a problem though? Because you know, and a little bit of a rant here. I get it. You know, these kids are big stars and everything like that. And there's so much money in college sports. And there's no owner of the University of Arkansas. But to me, that team belongs to the community. And it's 70,000 people in this state and from around this great country that go to those games. And those kids should be more accessible to the media and to fans. Bring back the signing day. Bring back the media day.
I agree with that.
Maybe bring back some autograph signings. Bring back the museum that David Basil's talking about. You know, open up the doors a little bit. Which I don't know your perspective on this, but my perspective on this, being here for a short time here on my second go-round, it does feel like there's a little bit of a shift.
Yes.
That they are trying to sell the program in a better way. Ryan Silverfield doing all these interviews with radio stations, with TV stations, that's the kind of stuff that needs to happen.
And the fact that he's gone out and talked to these boosters about raising NIL money or whatever they're raising it for. We need this money for this reason. If you got a coach that's willing to reach out and meet people, I think that's a big step forward. The big complaint that I've heard for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, going all the way back to when Jeff Long got here, is that they're just over there with their hand out. Give me some money. And a guy told me one time, he said, no store could operate like that. If Walmart acted like its customers, they could just expect anything they wanted from the customers. Here, give me some money. I don't have to give you good products and for a good price. Then you just go to another store like Target. So, you know, you can't. I realize that fans don't just jump from loyalty from one team to the next, but what they can do is stop coming to games and stop giving you money. And
that kind of happened.
It does happen. You've got to give them a reason to get excited again, and you can't do that by being aloof.
He had a tough battle to fight. You know, that first day, there was some negative attention, and that had nothing to do with Ryan. That had to do with, well, wait a minute, what happened to Alex Golish? And before that, we wanted James Franklin, and are we settling again? What do you think of the job he's done to kind of put this program over? Because now I think there's been a big shift. It seems like he's got people's attention.
Well, he's certainly gotten my attention. Now, look, I'll continue to say what I've said all along. It doesn't matter if you get to the games next year and they're not winning. That's when you find out if all this really matters. But it looks like it matters. And that's all I can say right now. It looks a lot better than it did because we were sitting there oblivious to some of this stuff ourselves. I didn't remember anybody talking about how dingy that place was down there. I had the one coach that said that, but I kind of forgot about it. You know, it's just, and as far as the NIL, it didn't even occur to me that Sam Pittman could go out and ask for this NIL money. I just figured, you know, it's Yurachek's job.
Yeah.
Well, when you get a coach that says, no, I'll do it, and he's got his own GM, and now even he's got a GM, and now he brought a GM from the football GM from Memphis, and now what I'm told is he's going to have other responsibilities, and now they've brought this #1 GM in the country, you know, and
Guys for Crowley.
Yeah.
Reported.
Yeah,
not
supposedly,
finalized.
and it'll just be, everybody's just saying, wow, how did you pull that off?
Had a 5-win turnaround at Arizona. They were a 4-win team. 1 year later, they moved to 9 wins.
Yeah.
Next question here coming from WV Hog fan who wants to know, would you say, looking at the 2026 football schedule, that 7 wins would be a great season? I would. I'm excited for this season. And they get an SEC home opener against Georgia. They haven't had that in a long time. Cool road game against Utah. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Watching the SEC network 2 or 3 days ago, they had these 3 analysts on, SEC's own people, you know, football experts. And they had each one of them rate the top toughest schedules in the SEC. Which team, 4 teams have
I feel like I know where this is going.
And Arkansas wasn't on the list.
Oh, okay.
They weren't. I was shocked. They named off all these teams. Mizzou, which has had the easiest schedule for 2 or 3 years, they named them as having one of the toughest. You know, it's going to balance out. So with that in mind, I decided to look and see maybe what they're talking about. So you start with North Alabama. Okay, that's a win. Okay, it's at home, it's a win. Utah, okay, that's a road game, could be a loss, but guess what? They just lost their coach. He retired.
Yeah, great coach.
Great coach, he retired. They're going to be in transition next year. I think they can get a win out of that, possibly. Georgia back here, it's a home game, might help, but you're not going to beat Georgia, so that's a loss. Tulsa, back here at home, going to be a win.
Better win.
A&M, road game, they're going to lose that game. They're not going to beat A&M down in College Station. Tennessee, they beat Tennessee here 2 years ago, but it's probably a loss. I'm going to give it a loss. Vanderbilt, that's a road game, but they're not going to have to face Pavia.
And they also lost their offensive coordinator. Tim Beck is now a head coach somewhere else.
So maybe that's a win. Now, Missouri, get to play them 2 years in a row here. And guess what? This is not the rivalry week game. This is an ordinary game. And Mizzou's got another rival now, a team they don't like. So, woo, that changes a lot of things. And I think Arkansas might pull off a win in that game. So that's another win. And then Auburn, got the coaching change. Golish, what's going to happen there? Your players going there, hey, you spurned us. You didn't even want to coach us. We're going to show you made a mistake. That could be a win.
Silverfield's going to show them.
Yeah, and Silverfield. South Carolina at home. You think that their head coach might be out by then? He's hanging on by a thread. So that might be a win. Texas on the road again in Austin. That's a loss. LSU, chance to embarrass Kiffin and Fayetteville, but it's a loss. But that's still 7 wins, best case scenario. I'm not saying they'll do it, but I can see now what those experts were talking about when they said there are teams that have tougher FCC schedule than Arkansas's. It's not as tough as it was a year ago.
Do you recall who had the toughest schedule?
No, I can't remember, but I know one of them was Missouri.
Oh, wow. And it feels like they've kind of skated
Yeah,
in recent
they've been
years.
skating, and
They've
now it's
avoided
time
some
to
tougher
pay.
matchups.
Now it's time to pay the piper.
They got to pay Mike Irwin. That's who we got to pay. We got to pay some bills. Time for a timeout here on Ask Mike. Back here on Ask Mike, and a quick correction that I had from my esteemed colleague here, Hayden Herrera. Tim Beck, I thought he was going to Coastal Carolina. That apparently, according to Hayden, not my words, that's not true. Tim Beck staying apparently at Vanderbilt. Tim Beck fired at Coastal Carolina. So probably me seeing something on Twitter, misreading it. Next question here coming from, I can't read that. It looks like it's something German, but whatever. Put it up on the screen.
Gruber's Kriegswein.
One more time.
Gruber Kriegswein.
All right, hey, if Mike Irwin's saying, it's authentic. Why do I hear fans generally disparage Ken Hatfield as a coach? His teams wanted a 75% clip. How can fans not look more fondly of his time given the last 15 years of sustained underachievement?
Yeah, I mean, that's the last conference titles were won under him. And look how long that's been.
Had a hell of an offense here, too. I believe Barry Foster, right?
Now, you were in a different conference. You weren't in the SEC. That's a very difficult question to answer, and I want to start off at the beginning. He had a little bit of a Houston nut problem. Initially, fans didn't like his offense, didn't like his play calling, felt like it was 2-3 yards in a cloud of dust, not enough throwing the ball. And Arkansas was running the ball at a time when the SEC started opening up. It had been a run league. At that time, it started to become a passing league. And they were losing some games early on that the fans didn't think they should lose. There was also this very weird thing that started happening because Hatfield was very upfront about his Christian beliefs and how he wanted to run a Christian program and all of this. I don't think fans had a problem with that. But when he started mixing the Christianity with the X's and O's of football, they were kind of going, wait a minute. Yeah, you can have all these values, but come on, let's do X's and O's when it's football. And they lost a game and on his that they shouldn't have lost. And on his coaching show, he opened up by saying, Jesus wept. It was a quote out of the Bible. And a lot of Christians felt like that was inappropriate. Don't drag that into a football game. So they kind of got down on him. And then it didn't help that he didn't beat Texas. He was losing to Texas every year. And then it also didn't help that the fans were very much aware of the fact that while Frank Broyles was very open about the fact that he thought Hatfield was a coaching genius, he thought his staff was awful. And he kept telling him, you need better coaches. I can go find them for you. I got connections all over the country. You need a linebackers coach, I'll go find you the best one out there. We'll pay to get him. And Hatfield was stubborn, and he said, no, I like the staff that I have. Well, Frank put his foot down, tried to get Hatfield fired. The chancellor wouldn't do it. So then Frank decided to put pressure on those assistants. And he wrote them all a letter and basically said, in so many words, you better get on the stick or you're all going to be gone next year. So they did. And Hatfield made a change at offensive coordinator. He got in Jack Crow. That was a big change. Our defensive coordinator left and got a new D coordinator. And they went to the Cotton Bowl 2 straight years, won 2 straight Southwest Conference championships. And I was in Dallas right before one of those Cotton Bowls, and there was a rumor that Hatfield was going to Georgia. Now, he didn't end up taking that job that year. He went the next year. But there was this pep rally down by the hotel where the team was staying. It was a big hotel just off the downtown area. There were 5,000 people out there in the plaza, Razorback fans. And Hatfield got up to speak, and every one of them interrupted him for 10 minutes with, "Please don't go, please don't go." So the fan base had changed its mind about Hatfield. He had won them over, and that's all they really wanted. And that's the way it is in sports. If you're not winning big enough, they want you gone. But if you win, then you give them what they want. They love you. Yep. Now the issue was the very next year he went to Clemson because he felt like Frank was just waiting to get him, which wasn't the case. But let's say he stayed here 10 more years. Already been here 6 years or whatever. Let's say he stays 10 more years. What if he has an incredible 76% winning percentage, which is the best in school history, and brings them into the SEC like that? That would have been incredible. But
maybe wins a conference championship.
But we'll never know. But that's why people don't talk about it. It was because it got cut short, and he just was gone. He's one of the few coaches that ever came here and used this job to go somewhere else.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem like that's happened.
No, not
even in basketball as well.
Musselman did it, but there aren't very many that do that. Most coaches come in here but see, he wasn't coming in from the outside because he played here, and he was from Arkansas. And I think he quickly made them, and I agree with this part of it 100%. I don't think you should ever coach at your alma mater. I think coaching is a job. It's got to be a job to you. It can't be that personal. It's got to be, you can't be sitting there going, "Oh, I'm making all my friends mad. My family's everybody's mad at him." I think that's one of the reasons Malzahn has stayed away from this after he left here. At least that's what I've heard, is that he doesn't want his relatives in the state to have to go through that if he came back here and didn't win. So there's reasons why Hatfield Jimmy Johnson wanted that job. That's the mistake that was made. If Jimmy Johnson had taken that job, if Frank had given it to Jimmy Johnson instead of Hatfield, they might have won 3 or 4 national championships here. And then Jerry Jones would have stole him for the Cowboys. I mean, Jimmy could
3 or 4 national.
Jimmy could recruit, man.
Absolutely. Miami a little bit different to sell than Arkansas.
I don't know. If you were ever around Jimmy in those days, he could sell, man.
Still to this
He's the only
day,
guy I
when
know
he's in
that's
front
more
of
of
the
a
camera,
salesman than Houston Nutt.
Whenever you say stay away from the alma mater, is that just strictly based on, hey, too emotional, too much pressure, it's not a great mix?
Look at Darrell Royal. He played for Oklahoma. But where did he coach?
Texas.
Their arch rival. And he had no issue doing that. He had no issue beating Oklahoma every year, even though that's where he was from. I mean, that's where he played. So I just think that's a perfect example of it being business. I mean, Frank wasn't from here. He was from Georgia. So it was business. Now, he grew to love this place, but it wasn't his home that he grew up in.
Yeah. That's really good perspective on it. But always, what happens anytime there's an opening? Hey, Arkansas is going to hire Rhett Lashley. Arkansas is going to hire Gus Malzahn.
Bear Bryant. He was from Arkansas, but he spent all of his time there, most of his career at Alabama. He was coming back here to coach, and World War II started, so he ended up in the military. Wow. That changed history. That's another what if.
That's a great what if. What if Bear Bryant had coached at Kentucky, Texas A&M, and Alabama? What if he would have coached at Arkansas? Maybe college football would be completely different if something like that would have happened. Next question here coming from Hog Dogger, who says, I watched a replay of the 1970 Sugar Bowl. Every Ole Miss player was a Mississippi native, and every player except 2 was an Arkansas native. I know transfer portal has a lot to do with the change, but it was happening before then. Why?
Look, there have always been certain Arkansas teams that had an inordinate number of Arkansas kids on them.
Seems like the best ones.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby Petrino, during the time he was here, there was an unusual number of really good in-state players. That played in the NFL, but were starters on his team. That doesn't happen every year. And if you go all the way back to when Frank first came here, yes, he was trying to get the best players out of the state, but he always had to go to other states. Texas was big recruiting ground for Frank and his staff, and so was Louisiana. And they'd go up into Missouri and over to Oklahoma. And then I remember when Bielema was here, it was the strangest thing, but he had all these ties in Florida. That's how they got Alex Collins. So no coach is going to sit here and say, I'm just going to recruit guys from Arkansas. You can't win like that. There are LSU may be able to do that largely, but And I think you can, if you're sitting there in Florida, you can probably recruit Florida players and win with that. You just don't have the numbers in state. You take what you can get, you try to get the best, and then you go out of state. You got to have good ties in other parts of the state. You got to have a good relationship with coaches. And I don't know what Silverfield's, where his recruiting area is going to be. It remains to be seen. I got to believe he'll go into Tennessee, you know, with some of his ties there. We'll see if he goes into Oklahoma, down to Louisiana again, maybe into Mississippi.
Is it a harder sell now that you have Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, all in the SEC?
Yes.
You can't go into Dallas and say, hey, you want to play in the SEC? We're 4.5 hours away from your home.
Yes, it was. The SEC, in my opinion, stuck a dagger in Arkansas's back when they did that. Arkansas came there on faith to help them expand, and then what did they do? They bring in the two teams they didn't want coming in there.
Was Arkansas's biggest motivation getting out of the Southwest Conference of we're not in Texas's shadow anymore?
Yes, because they were in a conference where every team was in that conference was from Texas but them. And then it was like, well, every time we go down to Texas, we got all Texas officials, you know, and when, in the newspaper, it's all about those teams, not us. So they didn't feel like, and another thing that I think Frank wanted out of the league was that there were too many schools like SMU, Rice, Baylor that didn't draw big crowds. And so the way they did that, you had to split the thing equally, your game, their game, this year at your place, next year at their place. And he felt like a school like Baylor was getting a benefit of a big crowd in Fayetteville, but we weren't getting a benefit out of the tiny crowd in Waco. So he just said, look, I know if I go into the SEC, there are going to be big crowds everywhere we go. And there's more money available for everybody.
Maybe the most important thing that ever happened in the history of that athletic department, getting into the SEC and really.
And Roy Kramer made it happen, but let me just tell you that Roy Kramer was an outstanding commissioner. He had this slogan, a rising tide lifts all boats. And what that meant was our conference goes up, every team in our conference gets lifted up. We're not going to pick out 2 or 3 teams over here and leave this team out. They didn't do that back then. Then you got what I call Sleepy Slive, Mike Slive. I still remember the first press conference we ever had with him. He was named the commissioner after Kramer stepped down, and he was on a tour of the various schools. He came into the Fayetteville, and he was in one of the meeting rooms up there, and they invited the media in to talk to him. I almost fell asleep. That's why I nicknamed him Sleepy Slive. Well, he didn't give me any reason to believe he thought Arkansas was special or why. I was like, what are you doing here? You didn't convince me of anything. So I didn't like Sleepy Slive. And then you get, you know, the guy they've got now, I just think he's all from day one, this guy has been all about NIL money, generating more money, getting more money for the conference. It's been about money, play, and do all this stuff.
All right, got to speed things up here a little bit, trying to wind things down. Cajun Hog asking, what did you think about Ed O's podcast interview where he laughed about bringing bags of cash through the back door to bring players to LSU? No wonder why they didn't want to hire him back as the D-line coach. The man has no common sense.
Well, I mean, that's his school, and he won a national championship there, and you're pretty much claiming, yeah, I did it with bags of cash.
I bet the fans don't care.
Well, the school cares because
school might care. That is true.
Even if the rules are different now, it still means that you won that other national championship by cheating. And you don't want that out there. Don't say something stupid like that. This guy's out trying to lobby for a job. That's not the way you do that. So I remember I said Arkansas ought to go after him as a D-line coach. He's about the best D-line coach out there, and he is. Yeah. But if he's going to say stupid stuff like that, no, you don't want him on your staff.
He's paid $20 million to go away. I would go find the best beach I could. I'd throw my phone as far as I could in the water, and I'd just be hanging out.
I think he's gotten bored, though. I don't know. He wants back into coaching.
Maybe he ran out of money. That could be part of the issue.
That's possible, too.
Final question here coming from Dr. Strangepork, who said, what a name. That's a good one. Knowing in the past that several sports writers and reporters have written books on the Razorbacks, such as Orville and Jim Bailey's book on Arkansas football, and I do like Purvis Sharp's book on the Voices of Razorbacks and Nate Allen's book too and the rest. When will we get a book from Mike and all the years of covering Hogs? What a great question.
Here's the deal.
You don't have the time to write a book?
I've done this for 50 years, and I've been able to do it for 50 years for one reason. When I'm not at work, and I spend, especially when I was full-time, when I was a sports director, and you know what that's like. When you run a sports department, you don't work 40 hours. So I worked a lot of overtime anyway. But when I wasn't at work, I blocked out everything Razorback. My wife knows when I come home, I do not want questions about the Hogs. We don't discuss it. We talk about other things. We do things that have nothing to do with the Razorbacks. I go out and play golf. You know who I won't play golf with? Anybody that wants to sit there and pepper me with questions about the I don't want to talk about it. Let's play golf. Here's the thing. It's not like I don't do some of that, but what I find it a lot easier to do, and it's really fun for me, is if I'm sitting around at night just not doing much and I got my phone, I'll get on Facebook and type out a funny story about Nate Allen or something that happened 20 years ago, or explain some of the stuff that went on with Houston Nutt and Gus Malzahn and Mitch Mustang and all that. I'll get into that a little bit. So I feel like I'm writing a little book, a piece at a time. So all you got to do is just go find that stuff and put it together, and it can be your book. I don't know. I don't know if I have the discipline to do that. Even if I was fully retired, I'm lazy when it comes to writing that much stuff.
Well, people love hearing from you, Mike. We love having you. If ever you want to write a book, I promise you, I will be there to read it.
You got to find somebody that would edit the daggum thing, and they'd be sitting there going, wait a minute, you got to change this part right here. And I'd be going, okay.
Ask Grok. That's what it's for.
Yeah,
You're not a ChatGPT guy?
Hell, my wife knows. She writes a lot of stuff. She knows how that stuff works, so maybe she can show me someday.
Hopefully one day we don't have Ask ChatGPT here on the Pig Trail Nation. We got to keep you around as long as you want to be here, Mike Irwin.
Yeah.
The one and only. Another great episode. Always great to spend some time with you. Thank you for checking out this week's Ask Mike.